This week's topic is cross-cultural communication. Cross-cultural communication is really important for a class on diversity because communication is key to the way that we relate to people that are different from us. And so understanding the ways that we communicate is an important way of bridging the cultural divide that we may have with other people. We've talked already this semester about the importance of understanding diversity. We know that right now in the U.S., our current immigration rates are the highest that they've ever been. And we also know that the birth rates of white Americans are declining in comparison to ethnic minorities. I say this because this is an important piece to understanding the significance of communication across culture and ethnic groups. This is a quote that I pulled from the book. It says, "A group never becomes a community unless it develops the habit of deep, respectful listening to one another." I hope that so far this semester you are learning the habit of deep, respectful listening to one another through your discussion board. In this presentation, we're going to discuss different kinds of barriers to listening. And even though this isn't a face-to-face class, I think a lot of the concepts are actually relevant for the way that you communicate with each other through the discussion board. So there are a number of different kinds of listening barriers, and I imagine that as we go through these, some of these will sound familiar to you. The first one is called on-off listening. On-off listening arises from the fact that most people think about 4 times as fast as they can speak. So for every minute you are listening, you have 45 seconds of spare thinking time. We often use this extra time to think about our own personal affairs, concerns, and troubles. In order to address on-off listening, you can try to pay attention to more than just the words that are being spoken. In a face-to-face environment, you might watch for nonverbal signs like gestures or hesitation to keep you interested in what's being said. Another listening barrier is called red flag listening. Certain words tend to cause an emotional reaction. When we hear them, we get upset and we stop listening. Can you think of a topic that really is a red flag for you in a conversation? Think about some of the red flag words that you know. When we talk about red flag listening, we tend to tune out the speaker when we hear certain words, and we lose contact with her. Find out which words evoke this reaction for you. Often these are words that you might feel strongly or passionately about. Try to make a conscious decision to listen attentively even when those words are mentioned, because often we learn more from people who disagree with us than the people we actually agree with. Open ears, closed mind listening involves the idea that sometimes we decide that either the subject, the speaker, or both is boring. We then have a tendency to think that we know what he or she will say, and then we conclude that there is no reason to listen because we will hear nothing new if we do. How do you think we could address this problem? Another common listening barrier we can call glassy-eyed listening. This is when we seem to be listening even though our minds are on other things. We tend to drop back into the comfort of our own thoughts. I tend to think of this as zoning out. When I'm in a face-to-face classroom, I occasionally see students using glassy-eyed listening. Too deep for me listening is similar to glassy-eyed listening in the sense that it also involves a sense of zoning out. Too deep for me listening often happens when we don't understand something, and so we decide that because we don't understand, it's not worth our time to listen. And don't rock the boat listening results in defensiveness. We tend to plan our our counterattack rather than actually listening to what the speaker is saying. I want you to be careful of don't rock the boat listening on the discussion board. Often we jump at the chance to attack someone's thoughts or opinion without really thinking about the situation from their paradigm. So take a few minutes and think about that. And also, I'd like you to think about your own solutions for these types of listening barriers. This is a quote that I really value. It's from Paulo Freire, who was a famous community organizer in South America. And he says, "How can I enter into a dialogue if I always imagine that others are ignorant and never become conscious of my own ignorance? How can I enter into dialogue if I see myself as a person apart from others? If I am closed to and even offended by the contribution of others, if I fear being displaced, how can I hold a dialogue?" Most of us are so busy thinking about our own ideas and points of view that we do not listen very attentively to others, unless we think they are experts. If we expect to make any headway and to get people to trust us, it is essential that we listen to one another. I hope that through the discussion board and through your communication with your peers in this class, you're beginning to see that each of you are experts in the area of diversity. Because when we talk about a subject about diversity, we're talking about something that has affected everyone in our class personally. And so each of you have your own valid thoughts and opinions to bring to the table. That's why you'll see that for the most part I tend to stay out of the discussion board, because I want to be able to watch you all, who are experts, communicate with each other in a way that shares your diverse experiences without defaulting to me as the professor.